Hey guys, this is Nick Christopher with Mob Tales. Hope everybody's doing well. Please like, share, and subscribe. Definitely appreciate that. Today we have two interesting guests, Mike and Fran, who have an interesting background with some individuals guys don't know too much about, but we're going to learn a lot today, that's for sure. So Fran and Mike, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having us.
having me. Sorry.
Oh, good. Well, just to get the audience a little bit familiar with what we're going to be discussing, we're going to be talking about a certain, associate of the mob, Nick Maschuci, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Maschuci.
Maschuci, yes, Maschuci.
He was otherwise known as Nicky Gary.
Nicky Gary, correct. And he was around a lot of the guys back in the day, the Genovese crew, I think, mostly.
Yes.
Guys like Jimmy Knapp, Tony Napoli, Bobby Manna, all that whole crew, pretty much. And a lot of people don't know too much about him, but his history is very interesting. And Fran and Mike are gonna shed some light on it. Fran has, I think, more of a connection to Nick than Mike does, but Mike's his cousin. And so what I'm going to try to do is first, before I get Fran involved, I'm going to ask Mike, because Mike already posted a lot of stuff doing his own research in reference to Nick and his background and what happened to him later on. So I'd like Mike to give us a little bit of a refresher.
Well, we lived on the same block, Hamilton Avenue in Kearny, New Jersey. I knew him as Mr. Maschuci. I maybe had 3 contacts with him. I had no idea that I was related to him. My mom kept her distance, I guess for obvious reasons that I didn't know of at the time. And we lived down the block. I lived 12 doors down from him. And whenever I'd see him, it would usually be, on his front steps or the front lawn. He was the guy that drove the big, long, white cars. He was, you could tell he was kind of tough and rough around the edges. And he reminded me of my Uncle Frank, also from Jersey City. I mean, all my family's from Jersey City. And I said, man, this guy really reminds me of the Ace. We called him the Ace, Uncle Frank. He lived in the basement with his parakeets. He was a Navy veteran. And I had no idea that I was related to him until years after he disappeared. Okay, my mother finally revealed to us that, yeah, the Maschucis are our cousins. And probably at that time I was in my early teens. Early teens at the time. So that explains his resemblance to the Ace. Okay. Well, they were first cousins. My great grandmother and Fran's grandmother were sisters. They were raised in Rionero and Vulture, was a town or commune in southern Italy. And I believe the Maschucis came over around 1905. My mother's side of the family, the Scullamaries, they came around 1886. So my mother finally revealed to us after Nick disappeared that we were related. And by then, Nick had already been gone several years.
Well, so what triggered your interest in doing research and finding out more information about this?
I always wondered about him. I was actually in the room when my Uncle Robert broke the news to my mom and dad that, quote, Nick Maschuci's missing. They found his car, but they didn't find Nick. All right, so that was in September of 1974, the exact date, September 18th, 1974. And it struck a nerve. I was fascinated by it, but at the same time, kind of scared. That those are things that happen on TV. So then another story came out. My mom had told us my Uncle Robert, the one that broke the news to my parents, had a problem with gambling pretty much most of his life, but he started very early. He'd go up to the corner bar and he met some older guys and they schooled him in the ways of betting on the games. They gave him the skinny on betting on the games. And he had an encyclopedic knowledge of sports. So that was a bad combination. Gambling, sports. And so anyway, my Uncle Robert at 19 got into some trouble with a guy by the name of John DiGilio, known as Johnny D,
Johnny did, yeah.
ex-professional boxer. And my grandparents, okay, were, you know, my Uncle Robert's parents were very scared about what was going to happen to him. So they shipped him out to St. Louis to hide out. So eventually my grandfather, I guess they wanted to get him back home and they went to Nick. And Nick was basically a problem solver. You know, even the guys on Brunswick Street in Jersey City, downtown Jersey City, Nick was up there with those guys as one of those problem solvers from what I learned later from somebody. But Nick, I guess, said, fly him home. And they flew him home. And I guess he saved my uncle. But they actually had a sit down. I never heard that term in my life before, a sit down. My mother talks about a sit down. And she said this sit down originally was in a warehouse in Bayonne. But before she died, she claimed that the sit down was on Armstrong Avenue in Jersey City. So my Uncle Robert obviously was there. My grandfather, Michael Scalamari, which was Nick's first cousin, was there. My grandfather, my uncle, and my father, they brought my father along. I said to my mother, why did you bring dad along? They were just newlyweds. Now, this was roughly in early 1964. And she said, just in case something happened. And if something happened, it would have been bad for all of them. Thankfully, nothing happened. You know, you're talking about two 20-something-year-old guys with things to prove, you know. It would have been a Pyrrhic victory if anything happened. But anyway, Nick settled the problem. He straightened everything out. My grandfather, the gambling debt was, from what I understand, to the tune of $2,000, which, I mean, in 1962, 63, that was a lot of money. So Nick straightened it out, and that was that. I believe my grandfather wound up paying Nick the money back. So that fascinated me too, and I'm wondering, well, who is this guy? You hear about John DiGilio later on being on trial. I remember watching news footage of DiGilio in the courtroom, shadowboxing, and I think back to Nick Maschuci, you know? So there was some kind of, hey, this is a guy that can make things happen and save people, affect people's lives. So that's how it came.
Well, so now for Fran, who I think had a little even more closer relationship with individuals that Nick knew. So Fran, how did you get in the midst of all this?
Well, let me show you a picture of my dad so people will know him. Okay. So this is the mystery guy. Okay. And the thing is that I just grew up thinking he was a bookie, never knowing what he really did. I grew up half in New Jersey, half in Miami Beach, and we were always in hotels in Miami Beach, the Fontainebleau, the Moulin Rouge. And I'd be in the lobby with the guys, and they'd be standing around in a circle smoking in their suits, and I'd be running through their legs, while they're having a meeting. And, I would overhear stuff. I mean, listen, I was little, but I was sharp as a tack. My father would always say that. And he would tease the guys, and he'd say, come here, baby. Who are you going to marry when you get older? And I'd say, you, daddy. And he'd pick me up and kiss me, So I was like the apple of his eye. And, my mother was as green as grass. He used to say she was as green as grass because if anybody questioned her, she wouldn't know anything. Because we really didn't know what he did He was never home a lot. When he was home, he was home. I mean, he was like a family guy when he was home. He was very strict with me, very strict with my brother. He always told both my brother and I that we would be college educated, that he came from the street, that he had to do what he had to do because he grew up that way, but we weren't allowed, not even to ask. And we never asked a question. Nobody asked. My mother never said anything. So it was devastating when he disappeared, especially to me, because I knew the people, I know the players. I didn't really know who they were. Like Jimmy Knapp, I grew up with him, so I call him Uncle Jimmy, right? So Jimmy was actually broke. Nobody knows this. Jimmy was broke. Back in the 50s, Jimmy gambled all his money away. And he didn't have anything. So he was promoting this guy by the name of Gary Garafola, who happened to be my godfather. Okay. So Gary, let me show you a picture of Gary. This is Gary Garafola. And he was very much heavily involved with my dad as a runner. And he introduced Jimmy to my dad. So what happened was, because Jimmy was broke, Jimmy took him to Florida because he had 5 kids and he had a sick wife and he didn't know what he was doing. So what happened was they wound up living with us in the Moulin Rouge. And they didn't have any place for Sissy to get married. That was Jimmy's daughter. Okay. So they got married out of our house in Jersey. And I have a picture of that here.
Oh, look at that.
Crew. Okay. And
That's cool.
yeah. And let me just show you the other pictures. Okay. So this was my Aunt Gracie. That's Sissy. And that's Uncle Jimmy.
Yeah, that's Jimmy. I can recognize the
Yeah.
face.
Uh-huh. And then later, after Aunt Gracie passed away from cancer, this is his new wife, Jeannie, who was a gold digger on the Gold Digger Show and the Dean Martin Show. That's how he met her. Okay. So I grew up with all of these people. And I know that you know Tony Napoli. Yeah,
Mhm.
who was quite a character.
Yes,
Yeah.
he was.
Okay. So he was involved. They had to kind of get rid of Tony for a while because he beat the shit out of one of the cops at the Rag Doll in Union City. Okay, and that's in his book. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's a true story. But
Yeah,
they had to send him
he went
away.
down, yeah, he went down south.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he went down south. Well, he actually had to go to like New Mexico first till they figured out what they were going to do with him. They sent him far away.
Mhm.
And, Jimmy said, this is my headache. He's my headache. The other kids aren't, but he is. So what they eventually did with Tony is they gave him the Caesar's Palace to run. And he ran the gambling casino there. And everybody would fly down there on junkets and gambled with him because they had carte blanche to Caesar's Palace. So in the meantime, I'm in Florida. Everybody's in Florida in the 50s. And I got to tell you something, they were running the country. But we didn't realize this until now that we're doing all this research. My father was like this incognito guy, quiet, never really raised a flag. My brother would say to him, "Why don't we drive a Rolls Royce?" And my brother would go, "Yeah, genius, that's real smart. Bring attention to us." Like, and nobody to this day seems to know what my father did or who he was with. And I have to tell you, he was with some pretty serious people. So I'm going to show you a few pictures of this guy here. And Mike, tell them who blah blah is.
And that's George Blah Blah Zamora, a Genovese guy, supposedly a strong, I guess, a strong arm guy for Vito Genovese early in his career, Brooklyn guy. I'm sure you know
Yeah.
about him,
Yes.
Nick. And that was one of Nick's Florida associates. Um, Nick, as Fran said, Nick split his time between Florida and Jersey. Just want to go back real quick. That incident with Tony Knapp, the Jersey Journal printed that story back in August of 1960. The incident where he beat the Union City police captain up, August of 60. And interestingly enough, Tony Knapp's address listed was 30 Hamilton Avenue,
Which
Kearney,
was
New
my
Jersey.
home address.
That's her home address. I guess he gave them Nick's address. But I guess in that photo right there, I guess Nick and blah blah were enjoying the nightlife in Florida. Do you know where that venue was, Fran, at all?
It looks to me like it might have been the Copacabana in New York. But
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
really,
So they were in New
yeah,
York.
because I've been to the Copa, and Jimmy's in this picture
Jimmy's
as
in the
well,
picture.
if you can see.
Yeah, I saw Jimmy. He's
Yeah, Jimmy is over here with Jeannie.
yeah, he's here. Yeah, I saw him. Yeah,
Yeah,
the black tie. Yes,
yeah,
I recognize him.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were buddies. And my father decided that he was going to take a position, which Jimmy wound up taking. My mother cried to him and said, please don't take this position. They're going to kill you. And he said, all right, then I'll give it to Jimmy. He needs the money. He's got the kids. I don't need the money. As a matter of fact, Mike knows this. The FBI thought my father retired because he made so much money that they thought he was off the radar. So, you know,
Yes.
he did this since he's a kid, since he's 13 years old, he did numbers. And he knew everybody on the chart. I mean, he knew Bobby Manna. I know Bobby Manna. I know Casella, his uncle. I know Jimmy. You know, very heavily connected people. But I didn't really know who they were. I just knew them. I mean, like uncles, like close. They were invited to all our affairs. We went to their affairs. It was just normal. So I have other people I could tell you about. Now, this guy, Sonny, who owned this restaurant, which we spent almost every night in when I was a kid. I used to fall asleep on the chairs. Mike, why don't you tell them who Sonny is?
Okay. The owner and manager of Sonny's was a man by the name of Joseph Chicky Cherico. And according to author Scott Ditchy, he's the author of The Silent Don, about the life of Santo Trafficante.
Yeah.
Chicky was, quote, the bag man for Miami. And uh, basically, in 1967, Chicky told the FBI that he considered Santo Trafficante a very close friend, and Sonny's restaurant was a favorite restaurant and meeting place for Santo Trafficante and his associates. So that's the history there. And as far as Nick went, Fran, you were there on a nightly basis, you said.
All the time, yeah. We went almost every night we went there. Now, I didn't really like macaroni, so they would give me pot cheese, sauteed mushrooms, and garlic knots. That was my dinner. And they would get it ready for me right away because they knew that I was hungry. And I was like 3, 4. And my brother would always have raviolis or whatever. But the thing is that I ate so much pot cheese with gravy and mushrooms that when I became older, I didn't want to see that stuff. I still to this day don't eat ragat. So it was like shoved down my throat then at the restaurant. Um, so then there's this other guy, his name is Blackie, and why don't you tell him about him?
Well, I don't really know all that much about Blackie. We're trying to figure out who Blackie is. Uh, the name escapes me right now. A lot of the stuff.
Altera or something?
Okay, Altera, or Altamura or something like that. Um, I have a I have two colleagues or collaborators. One by the name of Eric Grabowski, who Fran introduced me to I guess, over the internet, you could say. Eric is a professor of communication and a freelance journalist, and I've learned an incredible amount from him as far as journalism and research go. Okay. And he's the one that's responsible for getting those FOIA documents from the National Archives that we sent you on Nick, those 215 pages. My other collaborator is a guy by the name of, and I believe you know him, Nick, Joey Natal or Joey Nat from the Facebook page New Jersey Underworld.
Mhm.
Yeah, let me tell you something. He is incredible. He knows all about the people that most people know about, the bosses and the more prominent guys, but Joey also knows about those obscure guys, the obscure guys who are the backbone of the criminal organizations that keep them running. And he's also educated me about the life and culture of Cosa Nostra. So these two guys are my gurus, and it's a pleasure to be collaborating with them. Uh, Without those guys, it's, uh, I wouldn't have much. And of course, without Fran, I have to thank her too for welcoming me with open arms and letting her into, this part of her life. I really do appreciate it, Fran. And of
Well,
course
I
she's family.
appreciate that you keep my father's legacy alive
Thank
and
you.
is absolutely getting out there who he actually was, because people, didn't believe, oh, he was just a bookie, because we were never told. And I'm just learning now who he was. I mean, he was larger than life, and he had this presence about him when he'd walk into a room, and I always knew that. And people really had super respect for him. When he disappeared, people cried to me, men cried to me, more than one. And
Well,
it
how old were you when he did disappear?
16.
16.
And yeah,
When that happened, I'm sure obviously devastating. Um, did you and your brother do any kind of like, did you work on trying to find out, get some more information anywhere? You
let me
know,
tell you exactly what happened that night.
mhm.
So I was sleeping. It was a Wednesday night. My brother taught this in school. He was a school teacher in the same school that I was going to. That was my agreement with my father, so I didn't have to go to Catholic school. So, yeah, because I was supposed to go to private Catholic school, because I did when I was in grammar school and I wanted to slit my throat. So, I'm very rebellious, just so you know that, okay? I'm the wild card. My brother is a straight, book smart kind of kid. I hated school. So what happened is, yeah, I did punishment assignments. So what happened is, sleeping, I get a phone call on my phone, screaming, my brother's screaming, "Wake your mother up. Why aren't you guys answering the phone?" And I'm like, "You didn't call me." He goes, "Oh, I'm calling you now because I can't get in touch with mommy." And he's screaming. Now, this is 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, I knew I had lunch with my dad. I knew I was supposed to tell my brother, and I did, meet daddy at 11 o'clock at the diner down the block, the Arlington Diner. It was only 5 blocks from our house. Okay, so he has a meeting with him because he's running for election at the time, councilman. Okay, so
Oh,
what happened? I'm
your
sorry?
brother, your brother
Yes,
was,
my brother. Yeah.
okay.
We had a headquarters for him up on Kearney Avenue, and we had cars and hats and all kinds of people on phones and, really trying to get this election done. You would think it was the president of the United States, because my father went all out on him. He rented a place, had it painted, we had these hats, and it was just crazy. And I had to campaign for him. And my brother and I don't get along at all. He's very jealous of me to this day. So he's screaming and yelling and carrying on. And I wake my mother up. I stretch the phone out into the hallway. She gets up. She's all like disheveled. And she's like, what? And he's screaming at her. And I grab the phone from him. I go, "Where are you?" "None of your fucking business. Just put on a pot of coffee and I'll be home soon." With that, the change dropped from the phone. And I'm like, where the hell is he? Because if he's at the diner, it's only a dime to call. And he could use the diner phone because they were our friends. I used to use it all the time. I never used the payphone. So he's not at the diner. Okay. He had to be somewhere far away. Okay. So he finally comes home. It's about, I don't know, roughly around 4 or 5 in the morning. He comes home, and he comes in like a crazed maniac, screaming and yelling. saying that, well, put on the coffee. Is the coffee ready? He's a tea drinker. Why does he want coffee? Doesn't make sense to me, okay? So I'm asking him a bunch of questions. He's telling me to shut the fuck up, mind my own business. Children should be seen and not heard. That shit, okay? Because he is 14 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. Plus, he's a teacher, right? So he thinks he's the boss. So what happens is he starts bossing my mother around. Call Jimmy Knapp, call Bobby Manna. My mother's like, I don't talk to these people on a regular basis. I don't even know where the phone book is. So she starts digging through the phone, the drawer for the phone book, and she's, he's screaming like a maniac at her. And he's screaming at me. Now, what is the big hoopla about? This guy, first of all, doesn't really have many friends. He never goes out past 10 o'clock at night. This is the first night he's ever been out till 4 o'clock in the morning in my lifetime. Okay. So where was he? Nobody seems to know this. Okay. So hours pass. We do call Bobby. We call everybody. Okay. And everybody said that he definitely went to the meeting in Brooklyn. He was there. But they didn't have any more information at that point, and neither did we. I mean, we were totally left, just flatlined, right? I paced in the living room all night till 11 o'clock in the morning. My brother called my Uncle Nucci, my father's brother, and he said that you need to come here. He came over, and my brother and him sat down and immediately told my mother that they were going to take over the bookie business. What? My brother knows shit about a Shinola, okay, about the bookie business. He's a college educated kid, okay? He wasn't sent to do any type of underwork, okay? So I'm like, what do you mean? He's not even gone. We don't even know if he's coming back tomorrow. But they seem to know, the two of them. Because my Uncle Nucci said, I'll take care of everything. Really? Why? So my mother is totally crazy. She had a bad heart. She was operated on twice. And we don't want to shake her up, right? And my brother is doing a great job of shaking her up. So that's what we were left with that day. My brother told me I wasn't going to go to school for the rest of the week, that I was to keep my fucking mouth shut. We weren't allowed to tell anybody he was missing for a whole year. Now, why would we keep that a secret? I don't know.
Wow.
Isn't that
That's,
odd?
yeah, that's pretty odd. So since then, which is many years ago, so since then, that was what? That was in 1974?
Yep.
So since then, till now, there still hasn't been any kind of idea of what happened to him or what or who or what. It's
So
still
what happened from there was the first day, now we're not getting any money, okay? Nucci's taking all the money. We're not getting shit. And my mother's digging into the savings account, okay, that she had. My father left her some money that she actually used to wear on her person all the time. And she looked heavy because she had elastic bands and she'd have to stuff her bra with it, a long line bra. And once we went to a wedding and she took off her bra and her outfit, and one of the packs of money was down the toilet, was rolling. And she's like, holy Jesus, I got her. She's in the toilet grabbing the money. Oh, it was just crazy. I led a really crazy, crazy life. Okay, so what happens is now it's the next day. We're told all these orders from my brother. We're not allowed. And my mother decides that she's going to go down to the diner and collect this $100, which was from Mike's uncle that he made the deal with DeGilio. The deal was for the rest of his life, he had to pay my father $100 for squashing the hit on him. So he would leave it at the diner down in Jersey City on Newark Avenue. So my mother goes down there to collect the $100 because we were like broke. We're used to living a whole different life here. I had a private shopper, and all of a sudden we have nothing, right? So she goes to collect money, and my uncle's there. And he says, what the fuck are you doing here? And she goes, well, I came to get the $100. He goes, get the fuck out of here. You're not collecting any $100. I'm giving it to my son, Gary. She goes, but that was the money that my husband took care of, with this deal. He said, yeah, well, your husband's not coming back because they killed him and they chopped him up and they put him in Sheepshead Bay. Now, who would say that to their sister-in-law, who he knows since she's 18, 17 years old, sick as a dog with her heart, and within 2 weeks' time? Who does that? I don't know who does that. So,
It's pretty crazy.
right? So she
No,
said,
so his brother, so Nick's brother was connected, obviously.
well, he worked for my father. He was a runner.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So now he's big shot, right? Because now he's got the reins. Now, there's a connection here too, where nobody realizes this. My grandfather died on September 18th, years before that. So on the same
1934.
day, okay,
Yeah, 1934
okay, so on the
to the
same
day.
date, to date, he dies. So that's a little bit strange. And then what happened was Nucci, which is Carmen, my uncle, tells Jimmy Knapp that my father is sick in Florida this whole time for like 8 months. He's in Florida, he's sick, he can't. And Nucci was running everything. All of a sudden, my Aunt Rose has a mink coat. He's got a new tuxedo. He's got a new Lincoln. He always drove Pontiacs before that. He's rolling in dough, right? All right, okay, fine. Now, at the same time, somebody owed me money. And Bobby Manna was going to make good on the money. Okay. Bobby Manna writes me a check. He says to me, Fran, don't worry about it. Here it is. You'll cash it in 5 days. I cash it, it bounces. It bounces twice. I go back down to Casella's restaurant. I don't know if you know Mott's Casella. That was,
Huh,
okay, Mott's was Bobby's uncle.
yeah.
It's really Marty Casella. And I go down to the restaurant there and I said to him, I got to talk to you because this check bounced. He goes, oh my God, I can't believe it. I said, well, what are you going to do? He goes, I'll just give you another check. It'll go. Well, it didn't go and it bounced 2 more times. So now listen, I was crazy when I was younger because my life was totally over as far as I was concerned. So I didn't give two fucks about any of these people. I just felt that they killed him for some reason. And I didn't know what it was because he didn't owe anybody any money. They owed me money. So we went down there. He writes the check, it bounces, and he says to me, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want this guy's legs broken. He goes, all right, okay, just give me 2 days. I said, I ain't giving you 2 days. If you don't do it now, I'll get it done. And I did have this guy chased, and they were going to break his legs. I had him chased with guns. And Bobby was like, who the hell did you call? Like, you went over my head. Like, and I told him flat out, I said, I am not my father. I don't make mistakes. He made a mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake. So let's get that clear. And Bobby just was like, okay, she's nuts. You know what I mean? He thought I was absolutely off the chain.
I would say that
Yeah.
takes a lot of guts to go to Casella's place and say that, especially Marty, if that's who you spoke with.
I don't give a fuck about Marty. Are you
I
kidding me? He owed me $100,000. So I called Jimmy. I went to Jimmy with my mother and I said to Jimmy, he owes me money. And where the hell is my father? He goes, what do you mean? Your uncle is telling me that he's still in Florida. I said, what? He goes, he's telling me he's in Florida. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. I said, well, Nucci told me that you said that you were going to have him run the business. He said, run the business? Your uncle can't shine your father's shoes. So he said to me, all right, let me get you Marty's money. So he went out in the garden. Have you ever been to Jimmy's house?
No,
Okay, so it was a brownstone that they converted. So he went out in the garden and he came back and he was under indictment at the time. And he showed me behind the couch, the indictment papers were about this high. You know, he
Yeah, I
had
believe
all
it.
the depositions he had to do. So he said to me, I want you at 11 o'clock tomorrow, you'll get a phone call. Of course, you don't talk on the phone, and just follow the directions. And the directions were at 11 o'clock in the morning to come down to Casella's restaurant, and they were going to start paying me. And when I went there, Bobby Manning was there, and so was Marty, and they gave me my first $250 to start paying back the loan. And every week I went down there with somebody. I'd go with someone. And I'd keep my gun in the car, which was my dad's gun. And I told my friends, if somebody comes up to the car and I don't come out, just shoot them in the face. And my friends would be like, what do you mean? Shoot them in the face. I don't even know how to use a gun, you know. And I was like, you know,
Wow.
pull the trigger. So I would go into Marty's. One time I went in there and the money wasn't at the bar. So I said to the bartender, where's the money? He goes, oh, no, they're in a meeting and, you know, you can't go in there. Fuck you. I went right in. And everybody stood up because they all knew me since I'm a baby. They all stood up. They start kissing me. Rocco Napoli was there, uh, Danny Lamego, uh, Gary Garofalo. They were all there. And so they kissed me. And then the meeting started to become about how are you? How's your mom? Blah, blah, blah. And Marty said, okay, enough. We have to get back to business. So I said, hey, Marty, I was wondering why the money wasn't at the bar. I said, because I thought maybe you were going to put a bullet in my head and you'd do me a big fucking favor because I can't stand my fucking life right now. Because my mother, all she does is cry. And I don't have a private shopper anymore. And we have a shit life. So if you want to do it, please, you'd be doing me a favor. And I put my hand out, he took the money out, they all just sat there quiet, like didn't say a word. And I said, I love you guys, take care, bye-bye. I left. Yeah. And I was telling Danny Lamego Jr. that story, and he said he didn't believe me. And he asked his father, and his father said, oh, yeah, she came in like lightning. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive to say the least.
Well,
Uh,
I don't think it's impressive. I mean, I grew up with these people. I give two shits about what they did. I just made sure that my mother was taken care of and that if they wanted to hurt me, go ahead, bring it. I didn't I didn't care. So
well,
when you're
so,
fearless,
so how long did this loan to be taken care of?
took
How
about
did
five
it,
years. Took about
five,
5 years for them to pay me, but I liked it that way because it kept my mother's money going. Like I would give it to her. I
mhm.
worked two jobs and I had to keep that house running. She didn't want to move. So, you know, we had a big house in Kearney. And the electric bill was $250 back then. So you can imagine I had to work my,
Wow. Yeah, I would say. But
absolutely.
during this time, did you and Mike ever meet?
No, he was a kid. He used to come up the street with his basketball. Him and what's Big Shot's name? Svedlanka. He's a big producer.
David Sirwatka. There's David Sirwatka. There was the Durkin boys that lived a couple of houses down. No, I mean, like I said, you know, Fran was just Fran Maschuci from down the block. I had no idea that we were cousins. Um, and you know, I'm a few years younger than her, so we ran around in different circles. We had different friends and whatnot. Although our upbringings were similar, we went to the same schools and things like that. But yeah, it's funny when you talk about the Maschuci's house. Living across the street from us was the Mackenzies, and they were related to Joseph Maschuci, Fran's brother's wife. And I remember Mrs. McKenzie said that the Maschuci's basement was nicer than any living room on the block, nicer than anybody else's living room on the block.
Now,
You know,
why is that?
Oh, we always had, my father always had the decorator come in and change the house up. My mother we would go away all summer to the Doral Hotel or wherever I picked. And we would stay there all summer because my mother was allergic to paint. And back then they had lead paint, you know. So he would have the whole place repainted and he would always redecorate one of the rooms, a bathroom, the basement, something always got done, the kitchen, the furniture, whatever. And we would come back, my mother would pick it out and then we'd come back and it'd be in the house in September by the time we come back. So That's why.
Well, after this whole thing and after 74, after, Nick was missing, and you were in the process of trying to find out what's going on, um, did you ever approach guys like Jimmy or Bobby or anybody else in that circle to ask?
Oh,
What,
yeah. I looked Jimmy dead in the eyes, and he was sitting there with his smoking jacket on like this, on the couch. They had two chaises opposite from each other. And we were having coffee and tea. The maid had brought out, in the silver, coffee and tea. And Jeannie was giving me her record, a 45 called Forget That Girl. And I was just staring at him the whole time. And he was like, he sat up and he said to me, why are you staring at me like that? And I said, I could look at you any way I want. I know you since I'm an infant. And I have pictures of him holding me, so I'm not, they're on the internet. Um, I wasn't afraid of Jimmy. As a matter of fact, I had needed a loan for a business that I had, and I wanted to buy it outright, and I only had $3 million at the time, and I needed another million. And I called him and I said, I may need a loan for $1 million. And he said to me, baby, I would give it to you, no problem, because I know that you'll pay me back. But this is what I didn't know. He owed my father $1 million. And my father went there and was going to call the loan. So I don't know if Jimmy really did do it and he had somebody behind the scenes do it, or my brother had something to do with this, because that was very suspicious behavior, or the real story. And I had flown to Florida. I've asked a million of his friends, and nobody knew anything. They thought the hit came from Jersey. Jersey thought the hit came from Florida because my father was with Santo Trafficante. I mean, my mom and him, my mother and father went to Santo Traficante's house in Santo Domingo and stayed there. And my mother said, oh my God, we were in this big castle there, and all kinds of, stuff that was going on at their house. They had servants and a butler, and she was like, oh my God, these people didn't really speak English that well, but they took care of us like we were royalty. And she had no idea who Santo Trafficante was or his wife. And neither did I until recently.
well, so what about you had a better relationship with Bobby, correct?
Bobby and Jimmy, very close with Jimmy.
So was Bobby of any assistance in trying to
Not really. Bobby was in jail a lot. So when he came
Yeah.
out, he was watching his P's and Q's. Okay. He was very low key. He tried to keep a low profile. I had dinner with him many times. I had a drink or two with him at the bar, with Rocco. Rocco was my favorite, by the way. Rocco, when we were growing up, Rocco used to lay on the beach chair, and I was very little, and he would make his gum disappear. And I would go, where did it go? And he'd go, look, it's not here. And, he would tease me like that. He was more of a brother to me than my own brother was. But him and my brother used to pal out a lot because they were older, you know? And
But this is like what, in the 80s roughly that
this,
you were?
no, no, this is back in the 50s. We were, 50s,
Oh, no, I
60s.
don't mean that. I'm sorry. Maybe correct myself. When this is, I'm talking about like after Nick
After.
here.
This was in the
And you
late
thought,
70s, 75, 76. I went to Florida and I started questioning everybody. I went to the restaurants that he used to hang out with. We owned a club there called the Candy Stick Lounge. It was down the block from the Roni Plaza. We lived in the Ankara one night. He would come, we would have to move a lot when we were in Florida. We lived across the street from this guy by the name of Joe Marola, who was a CIA rat or whatever. And he used to fly planes for the CIA. So my dad had a DC-9 with him that we didn't recover. Joe probably had it in his name. My father never had anything in his name. So we had this club called the Candy Stick Lounge down the street. So I did all of the research. We had a restaurant called Wild Bill's Steakhouse. I went to Skippy. I went everywhere and asked every question. And they really thought that it came from Jersey. And Jimmy said he thought it came from Florida. So where did it come from? To this moment, we're still confused. We're in limbo.
Wow. Well, but Mike, I know you did a lot of research in trying to find something. Did, did you get even close to something?
Well, as far as what happened with Nick, he was definitely a man of mystery. Um, I mean, the case of Nick Maschuci is a missing persons case that falls into the world of organized crime. That's how Professor Eric Grabowski put it. He's been working on this since before me. I got into a conversation with a retired FBI agent who was around at that time. He was not involved with Nick's case per se, but back in '74, he had heard that it was over a double cross concerning money or a loan. Okay. He said he was definitely whacked, and it had to do with some kind of double cross over money. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to say about a week ago, I talked to a man, he's 90 years old, by the name of Nicholas DeSimon. Okay. Now, DeSimon's auto body, as you would read in the FOIA documents, was kind of the drop-off place for Nick's bookmaking operation. And supposedly Nick was there, according to the documents, before he went into New York. Don't know how true that is. Some of these informants, as you would know, through all of your knowledge and whatnot, might not be accurate information. But Mr. DeSimon said to me, I do remember before everything happened with Nick, and he said, I'm not sure if Nicky told me or my father told me. His father's name was Mike DeSimon, Sonny DeSimon, who owned the auto body shop. He said that at the time, he said, quote, Nicky says to me, what were the exact words? I have a quote, but I don't have the quote in front of me. But something to the effect is that he's getting out of the business and he had had enough. And then Mr. DeSimon said to me, well, I guess, that's one way to get out of the business. Okay. You disappear. So
So you're saying
those
that
are the,
you're saying that Nick himself was thinking of getting out of the business. So,
and actually, yes, Fran can elaborate more on that because what Mr. DeSimon said to me kind of matches up with what Fran will tell you in a moment about Nick getting out of the business.
well, it's the fact that you're saying this, my own knowledge of that life and knowing a lot of guys growing up myself is that kind of life is not something you just retire from and walk away.
Right.
Especially when you're running an operation where there's a lot of money's being generated. Because they think, oh, you think he's gonna walk away, he's gonna say something, he's gonna rat. That's their first impression, their first
Yeah.
fear. So it's not, like you said, it's not something you just retire from. So like you said, Fran could probably shed some light on that as well.
So his idea of retirement is he was probably going to give the business to his brother Nucci, maybe skim off the top of it or whatever. I don't think that that was really discussed at that time. I think that he went there, he told me that afternoon he went there to pick up VIG money. So
Mhm.
obviously he was loan sharking to people. I had a list of people that he was loan sharking to. He went to the meeting with Jimmy Nat. Jimmy was definitely there. And there was 2 FBI agents that were following my father, but they just suddenly lost the tail when he went into the candy store. Now, isn't that odd? You don't fucking lose a tail, I'm sorry. So the FBI is full of shit, okay? I did research with an FBI agent, came to my house for 3 weeks and gave me all these documents about my life that I couldn't even believe he had. Like, here we are thinking we're leaving, right? In Florida, my father would take us in the middle of the night and move us from a penthouse to a penthouse or a penthouse to a hotel because we were hiding from the FBI. Because at that time they were dealing with Cuba. They were going to open
Yeah.
hotels in Cuba. I heard that they were going to do gambling, right? Whatever. So in the middle of the night, he would say, "Okay, come on." And the bellhop would load the car, and then we would go to the new place. And then he would give me my bed, and he'd put me to sleep. And my mother would start setting up. And then the next day would be buy a new pool. We're in a new place and at the new pool because I used to take swimming lessons. So I'd have a new swimming teacher with a new pool and a new people. You know what I mean? So you never knew when your life was going to change when I was little. So that's how we lived, and it was very normal for me.
Well,
And
like we were just discussing with Nick, I know we're getting close, we're almost at the time that we have to, you know, end the show, but I want to just hop on this for a second, because I think we definitely got to do a part two. There's just so
yeah,
much,
there's too
to
much.
say here. My thing is what we are just talking about with Mike is the concept of, like I just said, like in this life, you don't just walk away. So
Right.
the idea of retiring is, like I said, you can't retire from this kind of thing. So, in your opinion, would you, I mean, obviously, if he was thinking to do this, obviously, you know, the guys in the life, obviously wouldn't take a liking to it, because they would fear that he might say something.
Say something.
So,
But if they
so-
knew, I mean, they knew my dad. He's been in this business for since he's 13 years old. And Bobby Mann, his father, and him were very close. Bobby, he loved Bobby. He took him under his wing. He was in the Longshoremen's Union with, my father was his boss at the time. And they knew that he wouldn't ever say anything. I mean, they knew his integrity. He was a real smart guy, my dad. I know very few people that were as smart as he is, except my boyfriend, but that's beside the point. Um, he would have been alerted to something, and they gave him no inclination. So they really either really knew him well because he had one eye and it was his right eye. So if he was sitting in a car and he was in the front seat, say, and they would come from the left, he would have seen that. He could see across the room even with his one eye. So I don't think he was going to tell them about his retirement at that point. He went there specifically to collect fig money and meet my brother's campaign. My brother was running and the
Yeah.
campaign more, that's his focus.
Oh, so you're saying that his idea of even retiring wasn't even discussed or even
I
mentioned?
don't think it was discussed at that time, no. He did
Oh.
have plans of us moving to Carolina and
Yeah, but
opening.
that's between you guys,
Yeah,
not between Jimmy or anybody else.
no. He was gonna open this with a doctor friend of his, Dr. Pinks in Florida, that they grew up together. And we were gonna do this franchise thing. And I didn't want to go because, you know, I was in high school. So I said to him, if you want me to go, you have to build me this house. And I showed him the plans and he looked at me and he said, what architect is going to build this? And I said, I don't know. You'll find somebody if you want me to go. And he would have, believe me. And they build houses like that now that they didn't then. So it was a different life than I'm leading now. I have to tell you, the rug has been pulled from my
I would
feet.
think so. Well,
Yep.
listen, Fran, before, and Mike, I would like to do a part two on this, because
Sure.
there's just so much
No
to talk about.
Great.
And
Be
I
glad
want,
to.
I want Mike to give us a lot more information. I know he's gathered a lot of info. So we, what I'm gonna, we'll try to set this up again.
Okay.
With Peter, because I love everything. It's so interesting and very informative. And it's something that a lot of people don't know about. It's not the
Right.
same old stuff all the time. But names like Bobby Manor, Jimmy Napoli, Tony Napoli are names people know. And I, like I said, I had the pleasure of knowing Tony and hanging out with him many times. He had a club, a cafe. He used to hang out at a cafe on Metropolitan Avenue and near Ridgewood. So I used to go out there and hang out with Tony there. And really quick, he actually helped me, Tony, with something.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I got into a fight with a guy in Crosby Boulevard at Howard Beach. And I was there with another guy who wasn't really of no help. And this, this, I was sitting at a bar, and me and this other guy, Frank, and this big guy looks at me, and Frank goes, "Oh, I know you guys. We never seen this guy in my life." He comes over to us, and he's like hugging us and everything, because at this time, I was an editor of a magazine called Mob Candy. And this guy's like, "Oh, I love your magazine, I don't know the guy from nowhere." After he's hugging us, all of a sudden he flips the script and he starts frisking us. I'm like, "What is this guy doing?" So
Yeah.
Frank gets up, and after he leaves, and he leaves me alone with this lunatic. And next minute, and then this guy like puts his hands on me, he pushes me. This guy's like really big. He's a lot bigger than I am. And I mean, I grew up in a time where I wasn't scared of nobody. So I push him back too. Long story short, this guy tries again to get into a fight with me. The manager of Lenny's Clam Bar, that's where I was, separated us, told me to go out the side door, blah, blah, blah. So I went out. I didn't want to go, but I did. And lo and behold, I find out through my good friend, Johnny Elite, who was John Gotti's ex-bodyguard, John Gotti Jr.'s ex-bodyguard, the Albanian.
Mhm.
And he was a good friend of mine. And I told him the story. And he told me, "Hang up, I'm going to call you back in 2 hours." He calls me back and tells me the guy I had a fight with was a Gambino guy. And I was like, "What?" I was like, "You serious?" He says, "Yeah." So what potentially happened is Johnny A and Tony Knapp went to a sit down for me about this whole thing. And
Wow.
Tony Knapp was there to straighten it all out. He said, this guy, his name was Stevie Buscemi, we find out. And he was a Gambino guy. And Tony, thanks to his help, he basically embarrassed this guy. He says, "Why are you picking up on my friends? These guys are what they call in the mob civilians. We're not in their life." And that whole thing, that's how Tony Knapp kind of helped the whole situation. Even though Tony was telling me, "Don't go to Howard Beach for a little while. Wait." I said, "Okay." So that's my little experience in that respect with Tony. I always liked him. I thought he was a great guy, always nice guy, always friendly with me, always wore a hat all the time. He was pretty cool. I went to his funeral actually. So I don't know if Fran was there or not. I have no idea.
I was in a different state at that time. Yeah,
Ah.
I lived in New Jersey at the time.
Ah,
I moved out
okay.
of New Jersey a while ago.
Ah,
But I would like to ask anybody or any viewers that are watching, if you have any information about this person, you can Google him, Nikki Gary, Nicholas Maschuci. If you have any information, to please contact us, to find out any clues at all.
well, can you tell whoever's watching the show? We'll definitely do a part two. But can you tell us the exact spelling of the last name?
It's Maschuci, Nicholas.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a couple of different interpretations of the spelling.
Yeah, well, everybody in the family spelt the name differently. Don't ask me why.
Yeah, Nick said
But
that. I Who said that? I mean,
yeah,
sorry, Mike explained that one time. So
yeah, I don't know why that was. I think everybody wanted their own place. But I also do have an organization for the missing, and it's the UFFMUC, and it's on TikTok. And if anybody has a missing person, or if they want any information, to please call or get on TikTok, and they can hit me up, and we'll look for them. We'll try.
that's all. Yeah, that's very good. That's awesome. Well, listen, guys, I love having you guys on. I really was a pleasure. I definitely want
Thank
to
you.
do a second part because I wanted to dig into more with what Mike knows, and of course, keep going with Frank because her stories are incredible.
Oh, I've got many.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
and we'll,
Thanks for having me.
we'll definitely talk again and go further with this.